That phrase, lifetime fluid, has probably destroyed more transmissions than every pothole, every cold start, and every tow behind an RV vacation combined. It is not engineering. It is not science. It is a pricing strategy wearing a lab coat. A transmission service at 30,000 miles runs about $150. A full transmission replacement runs $5,000 to $8,000. One of those numbers keeps you coming back to the dealership. The other one keeps you coming back broke. You do not need a finance degree to see which outcome the business model prefers. Here is what nobody explains to you while you're trusting that myth. Your transmission fluid is not just sitting in a pan, keeping things slippery. It is under enormous heat and pressure. Every second the car moves, engaging clutches, managing shift timing, protecting hundreds of small precision parts that have zero tolerance for contamination. By 40,000 miles, that fluid has already started losing its viscosity. The additives that fight wear and deposits are fading. Microscopic metal shavings from normal friction are now floating through the system like sand in an hourglass, grinding away at the very components they were supposed to protect. By 70,000 miles, I have pulled transmission pans that looked like the bottom of a neglected coffee pot. Black, burnt, metallic. The car still drives. That is the cruel part. It still shifts. You still get to work on time, so you assume everything is fine. Right up until the morning, it is not. By 100,000 miles on original fluid, you are not maintaining anything. You are watching a countdown, and the dealership that set that countdown in motion already has your next appointment blocked out. Not for a fluid change, for a quote on a rebuild. 3 years ago, a woman drove a 2004 Camry into my bay. Original transmission. I put it on the lift, expecting the usual graveyard inside the pan. What I found instead was amber fluid. Almost no metal particles, no sludge, no burnt smell. It looked like a car with 30,000 miles on it. I asked her what she had been doing differently. She pulled a folded index card from her glove box. 6 steps, written in Japanese. A mechanic in Osaka gave it to her back in 2009, and she had not skipped a single one since. That card did not contain a secret formula. It contained something far more dangerous to the people selling you lifetime fluid. It contained the truth about how transmissions were actually designed to be maintained. And that difference in philosophy between what you have been sold and what Japanese mechanics have practiced for decades is not a small gap. It is the reason you see their cars rolling past 300,000 miles, while ours are getting towed off the freeway at 120, 312,000 miles. That is how far a 2004 Camry rolled into my shop on its original transmission, shifting like it had just left the factory floor. I pulled the pan expecting the usual graveyard of metal shavings and burnt sludge. Instead, the fluid came out amber, clean, almost no particulate, no scorched smell. The owner handed me a folded index card with 6 steps written in Japanese, given to her by a mechanic in Osaka back in 2009. She had not skipped a single one in over a decade. That card did not contain magic. It contained math. Here's the math most people never see. Modern, full synthetic transmission fluid, even the best stuff money can buy, begins shedding its protective additives somewhere between 25,000 and 35,000 miles under normal driving conditions. Past that window, the fluid still looks like fluid. It still circulates. But its ability to actually protect, lubricate, and cool the internals has quietly collapsed. You are driving on a liquid that has already quit its job. The transmission just has not told you yet. Japanese mechanics did not learn this from a manufacturer's guideline. They learned it the hard way, by tearing apart dead transmissions and cross-referencing fluid change histories. The pattern was brutal and consistent. The units that failed earliest almost always had fluid that had been pushed past 30,000 miles. The ones that lasted longest, the ones still shifting clean at 200, 250, 300,000 miles, had their fluid swapped right around that 30,000 mile marker sooner, every single time, no exceptions. When I brought up the American Lifetime fluid recommendation to a mechanic in Nagoya, he stared at me like I had told him I never brush my teeth because my dentist said it was optional. A guy in Osaka actually laughed out loud, not to be cruel, more out of genuine disbelief that an entire country's drivers had been talked into neglecting the second most expensive component in their vehicle. Now layer the turbo variable on top of that. If you are driving a Honda with the 1.5-liter turbo, a Subaru with the FA20, or a Toyota with the 2.0T, that 30,000-mile ceiling drops to 20 or 25,000. Turbos dump heat across the entire drivetrain, and transmission fluid breaks down faster under that thermal load than most owners ever suspect. You are not just losing additive protection earlier. You are accelerating wear on clutch packs and valve bodies that were never designed to run on degraded fluid at elevated temperatures. Go back to that Camry for a second. The owner changed her fluid at 30,000-mile intervals from the very first service. Not once did she stretch it to 40. Not once did she listen to a service advisor who told her the fluid was fine for another 10,000. She treated that interval the way you treat a heartbeat. Consistent, non-negotiable. And the transmission rewarded her by outlasting 2 sets of brakes, 3 sets of tires, and every single American-maintained Camry in her zip code. That is compounding discipline measured in tens of thousands of miles, and the evidence is sitting in amber fluid at the bottom of a drain pan. So the number is not a suggestion. 30,000 miles. For turbos, 20 to 25. The Japanese mechanics I have spoken with across 2 trips and years of correspondence do not debate this. They do not hedge. They look at you the way an accountant looks at someone who has never checked their bank statement and say the same thing every time. 30,000. But knowing the interval is only half the equation. The other half is how you actually change that fluid, and this is where even well-intentioned owners cause damage they never see coming. The valve body costs $1,100 to rebuild. I know that number by heart because I have written it on estimates more times than I can count. And almost every single one of those estimates went to someone who had just paid $150 for a transmission flush at a chain shop the week before. Think about that arithmetic for a second. $150 spent to feel responsible, followed by $1,100 in damage created by the very service that was supposed to prevent it. That is not bad luck. That is a business model. When a high-pressure flush machine forces new fluid through a transmission that has been quietly accumulating deposits for 80,000 miles, it rips those settled particles loose and drives them straight into the narrowest, most sensitive passages in the entire drivetrain. The valve body, the part that controls every single shift your transmission makes, operates through channels barely wider than a human hair. Debris hits those channels, and within days, you get the hesitation between second and third gear, the shudder under light throttle, the hard slam from park into drive. I have watched this pattern repeat so many times, it no longer surprises me. Customer walks in on a Monday, tells me they got a flush over the weekend, and by Wednesday they cannot merge onto the highway without the car jerking. The transmission was fine before, now it needs a valve body job, and the shop that sold the flush has a sign on the wall that says, "No guarantees on transmissions over 60,000 miles." Japanese mechanics I have trained under do not use flush machines, not because they are old-fashioned, but because they understand where the real cost sits. A drain and fill pulls roughly 40 to 50% of the fluid volume. It sounds incomplete on paper, but that is the point. It removes contamination gradually, without disturbing the deposits that have settled harmlessly into corners of the system where they are not blocking anything. Done every 30,000 miles, the fluid never degrades past the point of protection. No pressure shock, no dislodged debris, no $1,100 Monday morning. The same extraction logic applies to fluid selection, and this one is even more invisible. A jug of universal automatic transmission fluid costs $9. Genuine Toyota WS fluid costs $22. Genuine Honda CVT fluid, roughly the same. The universal jug says compatible right on the label, and most people stop reading there. But Japanese transmission engineers spec their fluids to match exact friction coefficients for specific clutch pack materials and valve body tolerances. Put a universal fluid in a Honda CVT and you alter the friction behavior of every clutch surface inside that housing. Shifts go soft or harsh in ways the computer cannot compensate for. Clutch wear accelerates quietly, invisibly, until one morning the transmission slips under load and you're staring at a $4,000 replacement quote. The $13 difference between the correct fluid and the universal fluid is not a savings. It is a transfer. You saved $13 and handed $4,000 to a rebuilder down the road. The parts store kept its margin on the cheap jug. The rebuilder keeps his margin on the teardown. Your vehicle lost value at every step, and the only person who never captured a dollar of that value was you. The person who bought the car, insured the car, fueled the car, and believed you were maintaining the car. This is the pattern that separates owners who keep a transmission alive for 300,000 miles from owners who replace one at 140. It is not effort. Both groups spent time and money on maintenance. The difference is where the money actually went, into the transmission or into someone else's revenue line. And that difference starts with understanding a $2 drain plug gasket, the correct factory fluid, and the patience to let warm fluid drip for 5 full minutes before you button the pan back up. So here is where most people check out. They hear the logic, they see the numbers, they even believe the math, and then they walk outside, start the car, drop it into drive, and pull straight out of the driveway like they have done every single morning for the last 15 years. Nothing changes. The knowledge just sits there, dead weight between their ears while the transmission keeps grinding itself down one cold start at a time. I want to give you something so small and so boring that your brain cannot talk you out of doing it. Because the problem was never information. The problem is that every morning, your body runs the same routine on autopilot, and no amount of knowing better interrupts a habit that lives in your muscles. Here is the move. Tomorrow morning, After you turn the key or push the button, shift into drive and then take your hands off the wheel. Place them flat on your thighs. Count to 60. Not in your head, because your head will cheat. Watch the clock on your dashboard. 1 full minute, hands on your legs, foot on the brake, car idling in drive. That is it. That is the entire action. You're not warming up the engine. You're letting transmission fluid push its way back up through the valve body, through the clutch packs, into the torque converter, coating every metal surface that spent the whole night sitting dry. 60 seconds of doing absolutely nothing while hydraulic pressure rebuilds itself across the entire system. On mornings where the temperature sits below 40 degrees, you stretch that to 2 minutes. Same posture, hands on thighs, eyes on the clock, no revving, no tapping the gas, no creeping forward, because the neighbor is already backing out and you feel like you're wasting time. You are not wasting time. You are buying time. Every cold, dry engagement you skip is one less microscopic shaving scraped off a clutch plate that costs $4,000 to replace. The reason I tell you to put your hands on your legs is not some meditation trick. It is a physical interrupt. Your hands on the wheel is the trigger that tells your whole body the car is in motion. Hands off the wheel, brain registers that you are still parked. It kills the urge to creep. It kills the urge to rush. 60 seconds feels like an eternity the first 3 mornings. By the 7th morning, you will not even think about it. It just becomes the thing you do between turning the key and touching the steering wheel. Now extend that same mechanical patience to what happens after a fluid change. The next time you drain and refill your transmission, and you should be doing that every 30,000 miles with the correct manufacturer-specified fluid, not the universal jug, the one that costs $5 less per quart, and eventually costs you $5,000 more in a replacement. You drive the first 20 miles like you're carrying a sheet of glass in the back seat, under 50 miles per hour. No hard merges, no stomping the throttle to pass someone on the highway. You let the transmission cycle gently through every gear while fresh fluid builds its protective film across clutch surfaces that have been running on broken down additives for months. Vary your speed a little so the gearbox actually shifts up and down through the full range at light load. 20 miles, that is roughly the distance from your house to the grocery store and back twice. After that, drive however you want. That is the whole method. Not a strategy, not a philosophy, a posture change and a clock. Hands off the wheel, eyes on the dash, 60 seconds of stillness while the fluid does what it was designed to do. The boring part is the part that works. Now compare that to the alternative. You follow the lifetime fluid advice, you never touch the transmission, and somewhere around 120, maybe 140,000 miles, you feel it. A hesitation between second and third gear, a shudder under light acceleration, a half-second delay when you shift into reverse. By the time you feel those things, the damage is already structural. A Toyota or Honda automatic transmission replacement runs $4,000 to $6,000. A Honda or Subaru CVT replacement runs $4,500 to $7,000. And that assumes a clean failure. Sometimes the transmission takes the torque converter with it or contaminates the cooler lines, and suddenly you're looking at $8,000 to $9,000 on a car that is worth $12,000. I have watched this play out over and over for 20 years, but I have also watched the opposite. Over the past 4 years, more than 60 customers in my shop have followed this method consistently. The ones who came in with early symptoms, that slight shudder, that momentary hesitation, most of them saw those symptoms disappear completely within 2 fluid changes. Shift quality came back. That firm, clean engagement you remember from the first week you owned the car, it returned. And the fluid itself told the story. Transmissions that used to produce dark, burnt-looking fluid by 20,000 miles were staying clean and light at the same interval. Less friction debris, less heat damage, less of everything that kills a transmission slowly. I have a customer with a Honda CR-V at 220,000 miles on the original transmission, a Toyota Camry at 280,000, a Subaru Outback at 190,000, all original transmissions, all shifting perfectly. None of them did anything exotic. They just did 5 things consistently. Fluid, change every 30,000 miles. Drain and fill, never a flush. Correct OEM specified fluid every single time. 90-second warm-up before driving. 20-mile gentle break-in after every fluid change. That is the entire method. 5 habits, no special tools, no expensive additives, no weekend mechanic certification required.